Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. A very warm good evening to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. I welcome you back to today's webinar of the weekly current affairs. Good evening, good evening, good evening. We'll wait for a couple of minutes, let everyone join in, and then we'll begin the session. Thank you so much. Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening. Hi, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Yes, I was busy with a few other classes, and that is why I could not take the session for some time. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Sulabh, here it is. Good evening, everyone. I hope your preparation is going on right on track. I hope that the classes have been helpful. You have been attending as many tests as possible. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Perfect. So, once again, a very warm welcome to everyone. I hope all of you are doing good. We usually do not meet on Wednesdays, but we are meeting on Wednesdays because yesterday was Independence Day, national holiday. So, neither we want to take a session, neither did we want you to spoil your holiday and come in and attend the class. Because of that, yesterday's class is now happening today. Now, this, as you know, is a weekly current affair webinar, as you are very familiar with. The endeavor is to cover some of the most important current affairs topics that have taken place in the last week or so. We'll also be discussing certain practice questions as we go on from topic to topic. Let's see what are the topics that we have taken up for you today. Just give me a moment. Can you confirm if the audio is better now? Is the audio better now? Okay, perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, perfect. So, since the audio is better, I think this is the right time to go ahead then. Better? Perfect, 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 perfect. So, without any further ado, let's see what are the topics that we'll be discussing today. These are the topics that we have taken up for today's discussion. It has been a very newsy last couple of weeks. We have seen a lot of things, especially whenever the parliament is in session and when the parliament actually works properly, you see a lot of news stories coming up. The government trying to introduce new types of laws, the government trying to introduce new types of initiatives. So, a lot of news stories have come up. These are the ones that we have taken up. Number one, the government is planning that in the next session, that is in the winter session of the parliament, they will be bringing a law for protection of Indian manuscripts. So we'll be discussing what that is exactly. Second is a news story from outside India. There is a organization that has come in the news, that is the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization. It's a group of countries that share the Amazon forest, the Amazon rainforest, which is also considered as the lungs of the earth. These countries have come together to decide how to conserve and give speed to their conservation efforts. Third, we'll be discussing how the government is planning to amend the appointment process of Chief Election Commissioner and the election commissioners. As you would remember, just a few months back, the Supreme Court of India had given an order that the appointment process of the Election Commission cannot be random by the government. It has to be based on recommendation of a committee. The committee was formed by the Supreme Court, and in the committee, one of the members was supposed to be the Chief Justice of India. The government of India does not like it. The simple idea is government would want to keep control of any of these appointment committees. So the government is trying to amend the process for the appointment of election commissioner and the chief election commissioner. Then there is another international topic that was in the news. India, Myanmar, Thailand trilateral highway. It's a highway that starts from India, ends at Thailand. It has been under construction for about a decade now, since 2012. But the speed of construction has been extremely slow. That this is in the news because again, the government of India has urged the countries to expedite the process. In fact, government of India wants the highway to now connect till Cambodia as well. I'll show you the map in just a bit. Cambodia comes after Thailand if you're traveling from India. We want this highway to be connected till Cambodia. Then the government of India, the Prime Minister specifically, included new station, the Amrit Bharat Station scheme. We'll be discussing what that is. What is the Amrit Bharat Station scheme? What is the idea? Why is it focusing on certain railway stations? Then Navik is again in the news, as it remains in the news time and time again. This time around, the news is that the Aadhaar enrollment centers will be connected with the help of Navik. Then the biggest news story, or the most significant thing that happened in the parliament, was the government has now planned to replace the IPC, that is the Indian Penal Code, the CRPC, that is the Criminal Procedure Code, and the Indian Evidence Act. Please remember, overhauling of these three has not happened so far. The government has just introduced their intention that we will be replacing these with newer laws, replacing this with laws which are much more updated in today's context. These kind of big laws or big changes usually happen after a parliamentary committee first scrutinizes this. So the government of India will first give it to a parliamentary committee to scrutinize these changes, and it might happen in the upcoming session of the parliament in the winter session. And then a small news from economics. Index of Industrial Production, that is IIP numbers came out. They showed a good growth of close to 3.5%, but the growth was lesser as compared to the last data that had come out. We'll be discussing a few details about the IIP, how does it work, etc. So these are the topics that we have lined up here for you today. Let's begin without waiting any further with the first one. So the first topic is the government of India is planning a law. Again, the law has not been passed so far. The law has not been introduced so far. It will be done in the winter session of the parliament. The law will be about protection of Indian manuscripts. Now, let's first understand the idea of a manuscript. I'm sure in Indian history, the first chapter, usually in ancient history, when you talk about sources of history, this is where you read about manuscripts, inscriptions, etc. Now, India, being the old civilization it is, we have a lot of very old sources of information. There are many inscriptions that have been found thousands of years old. There are many manuscripts that are found. Many of them are not maintained well, and thus we are losing out on a lot of precious information. This law is trying to stop that. We are trying to make sure that the ancient manuscripts are preserved properly. Before we go ahead, let me ask you a very simple question. Tell me this: if I have to classify a certain writing as a manuscript, it should be how many years old? What do you think? Is there any parameter? It should be at least these many years old to be called a manuscript? What do you think? Or you can just call it a manuscript because it is old. There has to be a number, right? Okay, Akhilesh is right. So is Shubhangi. Neha, 5,000 years would be too much, man. 5,000, 2,000 will be too much. If it is handwritten, how can something be 5,000, 2,000 years old? Okay, not a lot of right answers. Just a couple of them. If I would have been in your place, I would have Googled by now very easily. But your answers show me that you're not Googling at least. Okay, so it is not 600, it is not 1,000, it is not 2,000, 5,000 or whatever. You might be surprised, no, only 75. Only 75. Sorry to disappoint you. It's only 75. Not 7,500, not 75,000, not 80,000, 10,000 or whatever you're referring to. Only 75 years old. I don't mean to say that every paper written before 75 years becomes a manuscript. But the definition of manuscript that what document will be called a manuscript. That definition says a document containing important knowledge that is at least 75 years old will come in the category of manuscript. So you don't have to think about thousands of years old, only 75 years old would be good enough. So basically, we are now living in an era where documents written after independence may also be called as manuscript. We are in 2023, right? So even the document that is written right after independence, even that may be called a manuscript, because again, the definition is only 75 years. Anyways, we'll come back to it in just a bit. So the government is planning a law in order to protect Indian manuscripts. Now, is it the first time that the government has suddenly started thinking about manuscripts? No. We usually have been talking about preserving manuscripts earlier as well. For example, right now in India, we do have a national manuscript mission, or the National Mission for Manuscripts. So we already have this. It's not that we don't have this. We have realized the importance of manuscript for a long time. But now we are just realizing that the earlier law was not strict enough. Apart from just a mission, we have to make a strong law. We have to make a body, give it the power, so that wherever these manuscripts are kept, they can be taken under their control. So this is just an example of how manuscripts can be written on usually papers, or at sometimes it may also be written on a piece of leaf, tree bark, etc. A lot of extremely important information can be had from our culture. Now, this law will be introduced in the upcoming winter session. As I said, India already has something called the National Mission for Manuscripts. This works under the Ministry of Culture. Do remember that as well. This mission works under the Ministry of Culture. If you go to the website of Ministry of Culture, you will get a lot of information about this mission. We have taken this information from their website itself. It says that India possesses about 10 million manuscripts. 10 million would be 1 crore. In 80 ancient scripts such as the Brahmi script, Kushan, Gaudi, Lepcha, Maithili, there are different scripts in which these manuscripts have been written over the years. Now, how do you define a manuscript? As I said, the number of years are at least 75. It should be written on a surface which is not a metal. Mainly, it is written on paper, bark, cloth. In some cases, metal is also considered, but in most cases, metal would come under the category of inscription. Palm leaf, other material that dates back to at least 75 years, and it has to have significant knowledge value. For example, if today someone writes on a piece of paper, Raj loves Priya, and then that paper is found after 100 years, that will not be called manuscript after 100 years. Okay. Or these kind of things, whatever you write or your love letters, etc. Just because you have written something it's found after 100 years doesn't really make it a manuscript altogether. It can be just a useless piece of paper. So it has to carry some significant value. Only and only in that case you would call it a manuscript. Manuscripts are found in different languages, different scripts. Usually, Sanskrit is a language where most of the manuscripts are found. Sanskrit is also written in different scripts, such as the Odia script, Devanagari script, etc. I hope you understand the difference between language and a script. I hope you do understand that. If you don't, let me give you a very simple example. So there are different ways to write. Let me give you an example. So you can write something like, if you understand Hindi, you can write something like "Aap kaise ho," or you can also write in this way, right? Both are English languages, just that the script is different. Script is the way of writing. So this is Devanagari and this is Roman script. Both of these are English language only, but one of these is written in other script while the other one's writing method is different. So script is different. Script is the laws, the rules using which you write a certain language, while the language is different. Similarly, Sanskrit is a language that can be written in different scripts. So in our manuscript, Sanskrit language has been found to be written in different manuscripts altogether. Manuscripts are different from historical records that are usually kept in rocks, firmans, revenue records, etc. Manuscripts are mainly those that give us certain source of knowledge. For example, one of the most famous manuscripts in India's history is called the Bhakshali manuscript. Do remember this name? This manuscript is an ancient Indian mathematical text on a birch tree. This is said to be the first ever manuscript where the use of zero was found. As you know, zero is India's invention. There's a joke that says that Indians don't want to pay any money. We want to bargain so much. That is why it is only in India that we could have invented zero. No other country could think of what zero should be. But because we had to bargain so much, we thought we don't want to pay any money. Let's bring down the number to something which has no value. So India invented zero. Anyways, so this famous manuscript called the Bakshali manuscript is the first example of the use of zero. This is an example of what knowledge the manuscripts actually give us. This National Mission for Manuscript is about 2 decades old now. The motto of this mission is conserving the past for the future. As per this mission and the information given, about 75% of India's manuscripts are in Sanskrit, while the other 25% are in other regional languages. One of the best ways to preserve ancient text or manuscript is to convert them into a digital form. For example, even today, many of the documents that you have at your home, the best way to preserve them is to click a photo, save them on Google Drive, basically convert them into a digital form. Similar is the case with the manuscripts as well. So the National Mission for Manuscript is trying to convert as many manuscripts of our history into digital form as possible. They have already converted about 3.3 lakh manuscripts into digital form, containing 3.1 crore folios, means different pages. The effort takes a long time because most of these manuscripts are not in a very good condition. So even bringing them together, making sure that you are not harming them, making sure that you're not destroying them and converting into a digital record takes a lot of effort. This is what is the mission of the National Mission for Manuscript. Coming back to the law that the government is trying to introduce in the next session, under this law, there will be a new body that will be formed. It will be a 10-member body called the National Manuscripts Authority. It will be headed by the Union Minister of Culture, who will head this body. What will it do? It will make sure that all the documents having historical knowledge in India for India's history, all of that is collected at one single place. They will take decisions about digitization, conservation, preservation of all these manuscripts. They will even be given the power of a civil court. Power of a civil court basically means that if they think there is a case of people stealing these manuscripts, they can even undertake investigation. They can ask for people to come as witness. They can investigate the matter. They can ask for evidence, etc., so that these kind of matters are resolved. This is the authority that will have this power, the National Manuscripts Authority. Apart from that, they will also try to make sure these manuscripts are not stolen or are damaged. As you see in the newspapers, even today, a lot of India's historical art, etc., is found in museums around the world. Many of Indian artifacts have been stolen over the years. These artifacts magically appear in some museum. They have a value of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars. The government of India tries to bring them back as much as possible. This authority will also try to make sure that these manuscripts are not damaged or they are not stolen. They will also collaborate with universities, experts in this field, who can make sure that knowledge from these manuscripts are extracted and they are kept in as much safety in a preserved manner as possible. They'll also make sure there's a digital portal to index and catalog all these manuscripts as much as possible. One example of the manuscript which I just shared with you, I wanted to give you a bit more detail about it because this was written or this was mentioned in the Hindu newspaper article which came out on this topic. The Hindu newspaper article gave an example of the Bakshali manuscript. As I discussed, this is the first example of the use of zero that got invented in India. It's named as a Bakshali manuscript because of the place where it was found. There's a Bakshali village near Peshawar in Pakistan, where this was discovered in 1881. It is written in the Sharda script. The age of this manuscript, as per experts, it goes back, it predates the work of Brahmagupta and even the 9th century Gwalior Chhatrabhuj temple. It contains a lot of mathematical notations, but the most important of which is the use of zero for the first time ever. This again is an example of the knowledge that is hidden in ancient India's manuscripts and inscriptions, and that is why all of that needs to be preserved, not just for India, but for the entire world to discover what our predecessors were thinking about and what is the knowledge source that we can use even today. Let's see if you can answer this question. Read this question carefully, and then I'll take a few of your doubts. Yadudel, how many of these statements are correct? Should we begin your time? Okay. Your time has started. And your time is up. 46% people got this absolutely correct. This is B. That is, one is correct, third is correct, the second one is wrong. It was launched in 2003. We just discussed it. It was launched in 2003. Only two statements are correct. Again, please don't confuse this with only two. How many of these are correct? So, only two of these are correct. First and third. The second one is wrong. It was launched in the year 2003. That is how the question would be answered as B. Perfect. Before we move ahead, let me take up a few of your questions. Okay. Vivek is saying partition papers are also under it. Under what, Vivek? If you're asking under definition of manuscript, yes, you can call it a manuscript. Lavanya is saying, does constitution come under manuscript? Yes, it can come under manuscript. Uh, Lavanya and Priyanka, are you related to each other? Because you have asked exactly the same question. Priyanka's question exactly the same. Is Indian constitution also manuscript? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Then I have a question. It means Indian constitution become manuscript. Yes, Priyanka, you can ask your question only once if it's the same question rather than repeating it time and time again. Yes. Then I have a question. Meshak is saying, can we call manuscript those scripts written in the form of documentary videos? I can't understand. Those scripts written in the form of documentary videos. I'm not sure what do you mean by this. Script in the form of documentary videos. Videos are videos and scripts are scripts. Script in the written form will be considered as a manuscript. The videos are separate entity. Then I have a question. Guys, if you just keep on taking names of old books one by one and keep asking me, is this manuscript, is that manuscript, is that manuscript, as I gave you an example, when you have something which is over 75 years old, written in the text form, containing knowledge, it can be in the category of manuscript, as simple as that. Just because our constitution can be called a manuscript doesn't change anything. It doesn't mean that something different will happen from tomorrow onwards. Okay. Anish is saying difference between language and script. I did not understand. Anish, language, as I said, the example that I gave you earlier, you can go back to what I wrote. Just see what I wrote. Both of these are Hindi languages. I have written the first one in a different script, second one in a different script. Both of these are languages only. Just that how you write it, that is the meaning of script. Similarly, Sanskrit is a language that can be used in different, that can be written in different forms. The way that you write a certain language is called a script. Okay, perfect. Okay, sure. So some people want me to explain the first statement. I'll explain the first statement that is written right here. The first statement is this National Manuscript Authority that will be formed under this law can acquire manuscripts from private owners if their uniqueness and content significance warrants it. For example, let's say I personally have a very old piece of paper which is considered as a manuscript. It has a lot of important information. I acquired it from somewhere, I bought it from somewhere, however I got it doesn't matter. The National Manuscript Authority, that's a 10-member body, has the authority to take that manuscript from me, acquire it from me also, even though I own it privately. That is what the first statement is, and that is correct. That is what the first statement is. Okay, let's move ahead then. The second question, or the second topic rather, that we have here is Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, that is ACTO. Now, Amazon rainforest is something that you would have read in your school as well. Amazon rainforest considered as the lungs of the earth. They came in the news quite a lot a few months back when we talked about the Amazon rainforest fires or the wildfires in the Amazon. The entire world was worried about the wildfires in the Amazon. Everyone thought that these wildfires are going out of control. People were worried about it. However, countries such as Brazil, which have most of the Amazon rainforest, were not making much of an effort, as per most people, to control these wildfires. Now, what has happened? Why is it in the news? There is an organization called the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, that is the ACTO. It's a group of those countries that have Amazon rainforest in them. It's an old organization. It's not that it's a new organization, but now they have come up once again with a plan to conserve the Amazon rainforest. Which are the members in this organization? It's Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, Suriname, and Venezuela. So these countries have come together with a plan, thinking that now we would want to make sure that the wildfires, etc., are controlled. If you would have been reading the news, especially international news, wildfires have come out as the biggest problem for multiple nations around the world. There are multiple wildfires seen in the US. There was this bad wildfire in Australia. There is a bad wildfire that we saw in the Amazon forest. This is the biggest indication of the climate change that we are seeing around us. Amazon being the lungs of the earth, the place where from where we find a lot of economic resources as well. It is important for not just Brazil or these countries, but around the world to make sure that these Amazon rainforests are preserved. This is why these countries have come together after many years to hold a summit so that they can now make a plan to ensure that deforestation and wildfires are controlled in the Amazon rainforest. This ACTO, it's an old organization. It was first crafted and signed in 1978 when these countries came together thinking that we need to sign a treaty and agreement to cooperate with each other. This organization came into being in 1995, although the treaty was signed in 1978. This organization is planning or has the mandate to plan sustainable development of all the countries that are dependent on the Amazon rainforest. Now, please understand something. Whenever any country has rainforest or a long or a large forest cover area, It's actually a very interesting problem to have. I'll give you a very simple example. If you look at India's Finance Commission, as you know, the Finance Commission in India suggests to the government of India how much money should the government of India give to different states on the basis of different factors. One of the factors that the Finance Commission of India considers, on the basis of which they decide the distribution of money, is the forest cover. Understand this. Forest cover is one of the factors that is taken into consideration of how the money or how much money should be distributed. Why? Let's take a simple example. Let's say Himachal Pradesh, let's take a very simple example. Let's say Himachal Pradesh has a very large forest area. Now, since they have a very large forest area, that means that they cannot cut down the forest. They cannot have a lot of factories and manufacturing, etc., in that area. So their economic development would not be very high because their land is covered with forest. No one wants them to cut the forest. So it becomes then the responsibility of the center government to compensate Himachal Pradesh for that. So the states that have a large forest cover, they have to be given extra money from the central government. Why? So that they don't cut down on the forest and they can get support from the center government. Exactly the same is the issue that Brazil has. Brazil has the most area under the Amazon rainforest. Brazil has been demanding to the world that if you don't want us to cut the Amazon rainforest, then pay us the money for that. Remember when the wildfires of Amazon became so famous some time back? There was criticism of Brazil that Brazil President Bolsonaro is not doing enough. They are just not trying to stop the fire. Brazil made the statement that if the world wants us to preserve the Amazon rainforest, why does the world not pay us for that? Because we are dedicating this area to the forest. This is the same logic as I just explained that we have in terms of money to be given to the state government from the center government. Now, these organizations or these countries have come together to help each other in sustainable development because at the end of the day, for these countries, Amazon rainforest is a very, very important area economically. They can get a lot of important economic resources from this area if they cut down the forest. Timber, mineral exploration, all of that can be taken out from these forests, but the world does not want them to. So it's a kind of very peculiar situation where if the world does not want the Amazon rainforest to be cut down, the world must understand the problem of these nations and try to help them out. This is what is happening in this case as well. Now, what is the need of this organization? Number one, as we discussed, Amazon rainforest considered as the lungs of the earth. They have to stop the deforestation because the world needs as much forest as possible. Many people, in fact, many scientists believe that just because you're cutting down the trees and saying that, oh, we will plant new trees somewhere else, that is not the solution. You cannot just cut down the trees and say, oh, I will plant the trees somewhere else. That is not really the solution. Afforestation is not always a solution of deforestation because when you plant new trees, it will take them many years to mature. You can't compare them with the old trees that you're cutting down. Similarly, deforestation has disrupted the Amazon's role as a carbon sink. To control that, the ACTO has to play a major role. There's also illegal logging, means illegal cutting of trees, selling of timber, etc. There is indigenous land encroachment also that is happening. Now, what do you mean by this? See, the idea is very simple. As the population of any country increases, they would need more place to settle down the people, right? Look at your cities. Whichever city you are living in, just take the example of that city. Just imagine, or if you're not that old, just ask your parents how large your city used to be earlier, and now it is just expanding outwards. The areas that were used to be outside your city, now in those areas, societies are being built. In those areas, shopping malls are being built, and you go to those areas for shopping. So every city is expanding. Why? Because again, the population has to be accommodated somewhere. Similarly, if this is your city, let's say this is your city, and after your city there are forests, there are the Amazon forests. Now, where do you expand? If your population is increasing, you have to expand somewhere. You will have to cut down the forest, right? You will have to cut down the forest either legally or illegally. That is called indigenous land encroachment. That is, people themselves cut down the forest so that they can expand towards that land and make land, shops, factories, etc. The problem of forest fire, wildfire, it is being seen around the entire world and not just in the Amazon rainforest. Uh, I don't know how many of you read the international news. Has anyone watched the Aquaman? Aquaman, if you have watched it. If you have not watched Aquaman, then Game of Thrones, the actor that played Khal Drogo. If not, then maybe you just know the actor Jason Momoa. I don't know if you know him or not. So Jason Momoa, just a couple of days back, appealed to the people, please do not come to Hawaii. So he comes from Hawaii. In Hawaii, there's a small island called Maui. And he said, please don't come to our area because we are facing a lot of issues. There is a lot of problem with the wildfire, etc. in our area. We have a lot of problem with the climate change. Please don't come to our area because it's a very attractive tourist hub. People come for tourism from all around the entire city, but that has not really come in here. That is again an example of why this organization is required. Now, what have they done in the past? They have tried their best, at least that is what they would say. They have tried their best collectively to conserve the Amazon rainforest in the past. For example, their member nations try to manage the Amazon forest by making sure that they take care of the Amazon and not allow cutting down of the trees in their territory. They have launched various programs to ensure biodiversity. They have even been funded by the Global Environment Facility so that sustainable development activities are not stopped. They also have their own biodiversity program as well. A lot of programs on paper, but actually, if you see in reality, not very concrete steps or no concrete steps have actually been taken so far. One important thing that they did was in 2004, they introduced something called the Manas Declaration. Any idea Manas is in which country without Googling? Any idea where is it exactly? This is in Brazil. It's in Brazil. It's a city in Brazil, actually. So in 2004, there was a Manas Declaration. See, again, I'm not saying it will always be true, but I've been saying time and time again that Brazil has the most area under the Amazon rainforest. So if you have to take a guess, also it has to be Brazil. Anyways, so this declaration came into being in 2004, where the countries committed to ensuring social and economic development in the Amazon while preserving the unique culture, not interfering with the local tribes that live in the forest areas, but also making sure that their sustainable development activities are not really hindered. A few important details about the Amazon rainforest. These are the world's largest tropical rainforest, called as the lungs of the earth. It extends to about 9 countries: Brazil, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, Ecuador, Bolivia, Guyana, Suriname, and the French Guyana. It is renowned around the entire world for its biodiversity. It is considered as one of the most diverse ecosystems in the entire world. I'm sure you would have read a lot about this in your environment classes as well. Perfect. Let's see if you can answer this question. Read this carefully and then I'll take up your question. Don't be confused with only any three, it means. Any three, any four, any five. Don't be confused with only. Read it carefully. I'll start your time. Perfect. %66% people got this one right. Any four, except the last two. Jamaica and Paraguay are not members here. Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador are members. I'll just take you back. Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, Suriname, and Venezuela. These are the members. So the last two were not members here. Jamaica, no. Paraguay, no. The top four are members. That is why the answer here is B. Sakshi saying how to remember these names. Sakshi, I don't know. Maybe eat almonds, have some chawanprash. Maybe that's the way forward. How can I tell you how to remember? I don't know, man, how to remember. How to remember the names of your friends? How to remember the mobile number of your parents? Just by reading it time and time again. That's the only way forward. Okay, let me take up a few questions and then I'll go ahead. Pulkit is saying authorities such as National Commission for Backward Classes, Scheduled Castes, etc., have the power of civil courts are allowed to give verdict or they can only investigate. No. So when you say that these authorities have the power of a civil court, what you mainly mean to say is they have a power to send notices to people, asking them to come be a witness in some case, asking them to come submit the evidence. That is the only power they have. They don't have the power to punish someone. What they can do is they can recommend to the government to take some action. For example, they can recommend to the government to put a fine on a person. They can recommend to the government to transfer a certain person. So they don't really give verdict as such to punish someone. They recommend action to the government. And when we say the power of a civil court, it means they can issue notices. You will have to be present whenever they call you. That is what we mean. Then I have a question from Sai Praneeth. Why Amazon rainforest located in South American countries only? Why don't why don't we have other climatic conditions like Amazon, the world diversity? I think you answered your question yourself, right? It depends on the climatic condition. It's like saying, why doesn't every country have a Mount Everest? Why is Mount Everest only in Nepal? Every country should have a Mount Everest, no? But you can't have that. So it depends upon the climatic condition, it depends upon the biome. And I'll not go deeper into that. I'll leave that for environment class. So ask your environment teacher the next time he's around. Okay. I'll tell Mukesh sir that there's a question coming your way. So anyway, you can ask him this question. But it all depends on the kind of environment, climatic condition that exists, right? Also, see, you have to, and you would have read this also, you have to understand things change over the years, how the countries use it. For example, the great Thar desert that we have, Rajasthan, beyond Rajasthan, the Thar desert, it used to earlier be an area of greenery, there used to be forest. But there was deforestation to such a large extent that we now have a situation that had become an entire forest. There are so many rivers that used to exist earlier. Many rivers have dried down. So it was also got to do with human induced factors. Hopefully, it will not happen with Amazon, but there are a lot of factors at play. Okay, let's go ahead then. The third topic that we want to discuss is the government of India trying to change the appointment process of the Chief Election Commissioner and the Election Commissioners. Many people expected this would happen, at least I expected this would happen sooner or later, and this has happened. What is the idea? What has happened? Let's try and understand this. So, in India, we have something called the Election Commission of India. The Election Commission of India, constitutional authority, it has a responsibility of conducting elections at the parliament level, the state legislature level, the president, the vice president, etc. They are whole sole responsible for conducting elections. They have a lot of powers. every single thing regarding the elections, from registering of political parties, recognizing political parties, registering voters, elections, scheduling, etc., model code of conduct, every single thing is decided by the election commission. Over the years, there has always been an attempt by the government to control the election commission. That is why the appointment process is in the hands of the government, or used to be in the hands of the government till a few months ago. The chief election commissioner and the election commissioners are appointed by the president of India, but there is no committee as such that is formed. So usually what used to happen, the government of India used to choose those civil servants which are very close to them. Every government, every political party has certain civil servant that they really like. And then there are civil servants that they do not like for obvious reasons. Some civil servants are favorite of politicians, some civil servants are not liked by politicians. So political parties, whichever party is in power, usually chooses those bureaucrats which are close to them and appoints them to these positions, such as the election commission. There have been multiple suggestions by various committees and commissions that this should change, but the government never changed it. So what happened a few months back, the Supreme Court was hearing a PIL. In this, the Supreme Court decided that from now onwards, election commissioner cannot be randomly appointed by the government. The Supreme Court verdict was that there has to be a three-member committee. Which are the three members? The Prime Minister, Leader of Opposition of the Lok Sabha, and the Chief Justice of India. This is what the Supreme Court had said. Now, this is exactly the same that is used in the CBI director appointment. The CBI director appointment is also done in exactly the same manner. The fun fact is, even the CBI director appointment was because of a Supreme Court judgment only. If you remember, even the CBI director appointment was because of a Supreme Court judgment in 1997 called the Vineet Narayan case. There was a very famous Vineet Narayan case, also called as the Hawala case and known by different names. It was in the Vineet Narayan case, the Hawala case, in which the Supreme Court had said that the CBI director cannot be randomly appointed by the government. The CBI director has to be appointed by the president on the recommendation of a three-member committee. Now, what is the problem with this committee? There is no problem if you ask me, but if you ask the government, what is the problem? The idea is simple. Whenever the government appoints these kind of committees, or whenever the government makes these kind of committees, governments would always want their majority. As simple as that. The governments would always want their majority. If you actually see amongst these three people, the government does not have a majority. One member from the government, one from the opposition, one from the judiciary. Whenever the government makes a committee, for example, if you look at the committee for the appointment of the CIC, Information Commissioner, CVC, Vigilance Commissioner, whenever you look at any of these committees, the government always is in the majority. Look at the Lokpal. But in these committees which the Supreme Court makes, the government is not in the majority. So government obviously does not like it. That is why the government now wants to change this, for which they have introduced the bill saying that we should not have this. What they want to do is they want to remove the Chief Justice of India, replace him by a cabinet minister nominated by the Prime Minister. They want to replace this third member by a cabinet minister nominated by the Prime Minister, which will be exactly the same as the appointment process of Central Information Commission, by the way. This is exactly the Central Information Commission. This is how the Central Information Commission will be. This is a bill that the government of India has introduced. Now, if you look at this bill or the government's effort to change it, as I told you earlier as well, this was supposed to happen. Everyone expected this. It was only a question of when the government will do it. It was not that the government would sit quietly. This is the law that the government is trying to introduce. As I said, the bill seeks to remove the Chief Justice of India and replace him with a cabinet minister that is to be nominated by the Prime Minister. The appointment process of the Election Commission is in Article 324. It says the Election Commission will consist of a Chief Election Commissioner and as many election commissioners as the President decides from time to time. You would have read this in Indian polity. For a very long time, India only had a one member election commission. Till 1989, we just had one single person that was a chief election commissioner. With time, we started to realize that the workload is increasing. We have to appoint more members. Since 1993, it has working as a three-member committee. Although one of them is called the chief election commissioner and the other is only called the election commissioner, but even then, the powers are the same. Even then, we have a situation where they get the same salary. Even when these three members together have to decide something, they at the end of the day decide by a majority only. So just because one of them is called the chief election commissioner does not really mean that they would have an upper hand over the other two. The bill, as I said, says that the selection committee will consist of three members. The third one will be the Union Cabinet Minister. The first two are fine. Prime Minister, the leader of opposition, the Lok Sabha. Also, in case we do not have a leader of the opposition, because in case the opposition party does not get 10% seats in Lok Sabha, in this place we would have the leader of the single largest opposition party. Also, the bill talks about a search committee as well. So there's a selection committee and then there's a search committee. Selection committee is a three-member committee. Search committee is the one that will shortlist certain names. Search committee will forward 5 names for consideration. Out of these 5 names, selection committee will finalize. This search committee itself will consist of the cabinet secretary, that is the highest ranked IAS officer in the country, and 2 other secretary rank officers in the government of India. These 3 people will form the search committee. What will they do? They will come together, recommend 5 names, give it to selection committee, out of it the selection committee will make their final decision. Also, it cannot be invalidated due to vacancy, meaning that if any of the 2 committees, search committee or selection committee, has a vacancy, that is, all the 3 members are not present, that doesn't mean that the committee will not work. For example, I'll give you a simple example. Let's say in this case, opposition, let's say, boycotts this. Opposition says, Congress says, we will not send a member of leader of the opposition. We don't trust the government, we are walking out. So if the leader of the opposition is not present, that doesn't mean the committee will not work. Because they would want to boycott it, the government would not want that to happen. That is what is meant by vacancy not being a stumbling block. So just because there's a vacancy in the committee, out of the 3 members, one of them is not present, that does not mean that the committee will not function. It will still function as much as possible. The previous law with which the election commissioner were appointed, that will be removed now. It will be replaced by a new law. It will be tried that the selection committee makes appointment by a unanimous process. That is, they will try that all of them agree to the single name, but just in case all 3 do not agree to a single name for appointment, it will be taken, the decision will be taken by the majority. As simple as that. So it will be tried that we will have unanimity, but in case unanimity is not achieved, they will go ahead with the majority judgment and they will recommend a name to the President of India and the President will appoint that person as the election commissioner. There are obvious concerns with the bill. There is no denying that. First obvious concern, the balance of power. See, all of these concerns basically point out towards one single thing. India's democracy is based on the idea of election commission working independently. And it does happen. Is not dependent on the government for most of the things. The government of India doesn't tell the election commission when to hold elections, where to hold elections, how to hold elections. The election commission has complete authority to take actions, to take action in the moral code of conduct violation as well. But when you have a committee where government is in the majority and that committee decides who will be the election commission, a big question on balance of power. Can the government of the day be allowed to control the election process? That is the biggest concern with the bill. There is another way of looking at this. For example, many people would remember about the NJAC. Remember? NJAC, National Judicial Appointment Commission. NJAC was introduced by the government of India to replace the collegium system, if you remember. If you don't remember, NJAC was introduced to replace the collegium system for appointment of judges in the Supreme Court and the High Court. It had 6 members. One of the members was the law minister, if you remember correctly. One of the members was the law minister. And the Supreme Court struck down the NJAC. They gave multiple reasons. One of the reasons the Supreme Court gave was executive cannot interfere in the appointment of the judiciary. They said law minister is an executive, so he can't feature in the committee that decides on the judges. That is not the case. Now, if you see, exactly opposite is happening here. Now you have the judiciary featuring in a committee that will go ahead and decide the election commission. So you might say that the judiciary should apply the same logic with themselves as well, but nothing is ideal. This is the world that we are living in right now. Let's see if you can answer this question that was asked in 2017 by UPSC. Read this question carefully. 59% people got this side. This is D. Only third statement is correct. First and the second are wrong. As we discussed, it's a 3-member body. Home Affairs Ministry has nothing to do with deciding the election schedule. It is the Election Commission of India only that decides the election schedule and not the Home Ministry. 1 and 2 are wrong. Only the third statement is correct. The answer thus has to be D. Perfect. Before I go ahead, let me take up a few comments very quickly and then we'll go ahead. Arjun is saying, even though Amazon forests are in French Guyana, why are they not a part of ACTO? Arjun, I don't know why they are not a part of ACTO. They decide. Probably one of the reasons is French Guyana is a territory, overseas territory of France only. So maybe the South American countries did not want a European country to feature here. Maybe that's why. But there's no specific logic given. It's like asking why is it that in the ASEAN members, Bangladesh is not a part of it. Maybe they did not find logic or detail in there. Vikram, NJC in detail, you can ask that in your polity class. NJC in simple term, National Judicial Appointment Commission, 6-member committee, was introduced to replace the collegium system. It was supposed to be a committee that would recommend appointment of judges in the Supreme Court and the High Court. Okay. Himashri, guys, the question about whether judiciary will strike down the bill or not, how can I answer this? How can anyone answer this? Judiciary decides what it wants to. I don't know the future. No one knows the future. So if someone tells you, I know judiciary will strike down the law, that's not true. It is a judiciary that will decide whether the law will be struck down or not. If it was known to us already, why would the government make the law? So if the judiciary will strike it down, will not strike it down, it depends on the judiciary, right? So we'll have to see whether it actually strikes down or not. You cannot think about the law right now, whether it will be struck down by judiciary or not. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next news or the next topic that was in the news is the IMT, Trilateral Highway. It's a highway starting from India, going to Myanmar, and then going to Thailand. Let me first show you the picture of the graph, and we'll come back in just a bit. See this. That is the entire idea. The idea is it will start from India, it will cover the entire length of Myanmar, and then it will enter Thailand. That is the entire idea. So, all of you who are planning to go to your Thailand trip on a bike, on a car, you can do that. Maybe not right now, it will take some time, but you can. Just like you keep on making plans about Goa and canceling them, you can make this plan also and then cancel that in the last moment. Anyway, so this is the IMT project that has been in talks for a long time. Somehow or the other, this project has not gone ahead, and I'll tell you the reasons also why it has not gone ahead. So India has been pushing for this project to go on, and we wanted to extend to even Cambodia. Cambodia, I'll again show you one of the photos. So if you see, this is Thailand, this is Cambodia. So only when it goes to Thailand, then we'll reach Cambodia. So the idea is India wants it to extend till Cambodia as well. Now, what is the issue here? There are multiple issues at play. Why is it that this project is being delayed? The simple idea is whenever there is a Chinese project, whenever China is involved in a project, you will see that the projects go on at a very, very, very fast pace. See the difference between a project that is led by China as compared to a project that is led by India. The difference mainly is in the financing part. Since China has a lot more money, and since China is willing to spend a lot more money, what China does is whenever they start or initiate this kind of a project, they are happy to finance as much as possible. So China, for example, when they want this kind of a project, they will throw a lot of money, invest a lot of money, send their own expertise, send their own people. Look at what happened in the CPEC. Look at how they build the port in Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. Look at what they are doing in a lot of African countries and South American countries. They're just throwing money and building infrastructure. On the other hand, when we have India as a leading partner, India does try to help with financing, but we can't finance the entire project. And that's how the project gets delayed. Look at the Chabahar port. The Chabahar port is a prime example of the project being delayed time and time and time again because Iran kept on saying that India is not giving enough money or India is not giving money at such a fast pace as it should. So that's the first reason. Second reason again is what is happening in Myanmar. Since 2021, Myanmar has been under the rule of the military. Even before that, there were democratic elections in Myanmar. There was a government for about 5 years. But either here or there, usually the military of Myanmar remains in control in the country. The country of Myanmar is not stable right now, even though they are under rule of the military. Over half of the country is not under their control. There is infighting happening right now. That is why, whenever the government of India asks Myanmar to build or to start construction, their answer is first, let us control our own civil war and then we'll build your own highway. So the highway is being delayed considerably because of these two reasons. First, as I said, finance always remains an issue. And the second issue remains what is happening within Myanmar. India plans to ensure that we can get it to Cambodia. Now, the reason being, the more highway and the more connectivity that you build, the better it is for trade, easier it is for the trade, easier it is for the people movement as well. India has urged Cambodia also to be a part of it. In fact, if you remember or if you see clearly, India Cambodia relationship has improved significantly over the past few years. Cambodia is also an ASEAN member. As you know, India's Act East policy or Look East policy, whatever you want to call it, started with focus on ASEAN. One of the members of the ASEAN is Cambodia. Cambodia also has many temples, and the government of India has been trying to restore multiple Cambodian temples as well. The famous temple of Angkor Wat, Peria temple, all of these in Cambodia are being restored by the government of India, and the government also wants this highway project to go till Cambodia as well. Now, if you look at this project, the entire plan of the highway is it will be 1360 kilometers long. It will start in Manipur in India, pass through Myanmar, and it will eventually reach Thailand. It was first proposed in 2002, but the construction only started in 2012. Even for this, just imagine, it has been over 10 years now. For over 10 years, we have not been able to build a road that is only 1300 kilometers. Just imagine that. For 10 years, we have not been able to build a road that is 1300 kilometers. If you just convert that, let's take a simple example. Just convert that into number of days. On an average, let's say I'm taking 10 years. If you convert that into days, these many days, and we have not been able to build a road that is about 1300 kilometers. So just understand the speed at which the project is going on. It's not even half a kilometer of road every single day. That is the speed at which the project is going on right now. So again, it has to be at a much, much faster pace as compared to where it is. If you compare that with China and many other countries around the world, see, whenever the project involves multiple countries, it will usually get delayed. But delay of a decade or so cannot be justified. On the Indian side, it is being implemented by the Ministry of External Affairs in collaboration with Myanmar and the Thailand government as well. Budget has been given by our own Ministry of Finance for the India part. India, in fact, has offered certain help to Myanmar also. We have not offered help to Thailand, they will build on their own. But for Myanmar, we have offered certain help by building some section of their highway. The problem, however, is even when our workers build highway within Myanmar, we have to get certain guarantee from Myanmar. Guarantee of the safety of our workers, guarantee that you will maintain this highway in this look in this era or in this violent atmosphere as well, because the Myanmar government is not focusing on this, and the longest stretch of this highway is through Myanmar only. That is why this project is being delayed time and time again. So it remains to be seen at what speed would the project now go on in the coming years. No, Sakib, India is not financing all of it. We are financing a part of it in Myanmar and our part in India as well. Let's see if we can answer this question. Read this carefully. How many of these nations are members of both ASEAN and BIMSTEC? Okay. Should I start with the options? ASEAN and BIMSTEC, okay? Both. Should we start? Okay. Only 27% got this right. This is B. Only two of them are common members. I'm surprised. I thought more people would know this. Which are the two common members? There are only two. There is Thailand and Myanmar, which are both members of BIMSTEC and ASEAN. Let me show you this map. Look at this. Look at this. If you see, this is ASEAN members from here to here. This is this is SARC. Common in in BIMSTEC and ASEAN is only Thailand and Myanmar. I think some people got confused maybe with Cambodia. Cambodia is not a part of BIMSTEC. These are the common members. Do remember this. These kind of questions are asked very often, very commonly by the UPSC in the prelims exam. Whenever there is a group that remains in the news for whatever reasons, do try and remember the members of the group, the common members, etc. So you can see that as well. Perfect. Let me take up a few questions before going ahead. Sachin is saying, what is the major cause of past forest Amazon fire? What steps ACTO has taken to that? See, Sachin, there are multiple reasons why wildfire occurs. Climate change being one reason. The last wildfire that occurred, there are many conspiracy theories. Some theories are that Brazilian government itself did it because they wanted to clear certain area. So there are different theories given. When no one wants to take the blame, everyone says it is climate change only. But a lot of times it is being done intentionally by the people. What has ACTO done about it? Not nothing much. They have had this first summit after so many years. They have been criticized for not doing enough. They keep on saying that at an individual level they are taking certain steps, but nothing concrete has actually come out of it so far. Vishnu Maya saying how climate change can cause wildfire. Climate change means increasing temperatures, and a slight increase in temperature basically teamed up with appropriate climatic conditions is enough to start a fire in the forest. And once a fire in the forest starts, it doesn't take a lot of time before it spreads. Um, then, okay, I'll take one more question. Akash is saying why government of India is emphasizing this project even when we conduct trade with South Asian countries through the sea route, which is more effective and environment friendly. Okay, let me show you this map so that you can understand this. So the question is, why are we insisting on a road if we can just conduct trade via water? The point here is you have to understand where this highway is being built. It's not a highway, for example, to connect Delhi with Thailand. It's not a highway to connect Mumbai or Bangalore with Thailand. It's also about development of our own northeastern part of the country. So it's not just because trade with these countries, it's also because we want to have better economic opportunities for people living in the northeast part of the country. So what would you have, or in an alternative way, you would go here to the Howrah port, Kolkata port, and then you take this route via the Siliguri corridor, and then you can reach the northeast. That is ideal for the country. So for us, if we want to have better connectivity to the northeast part of the country, give them better economic opportunities, this is the plan for that. Okay, that is why. Okay, let's go ahead then. The next topic that is in the news, short news. It was in the news because it was inaugurated by the Prime Minister. Something called the Amrit Bharat Station Scheme. Very simple idea. The idea is we want to renovate our railway stations. As simple as that. We want to renovate our railway station. So the government of India is planning to renovate a lot of railway stations in India. If you have noticed, a lot of railway stations in the country in the past few years have been renovated. And a lot of railway stations, you have Wi-Fi is being given with Google and the government of India have come together to form a collaboration to give 30 minutes or so of free Wi-Fi on the railway stations. Infrastructure is improving, but even then, there is still a lot of scope of the railway stations becoming better. Because even today, huge number of people travel by trains every single day in India, and the railway stations have to become the hub of all that development activity. That is what the government of India is planning. So Prime Minister recently laid the foundation for redevelopment of 508 railway stations across the country as a part of the Amrit Bharat Station scheme. It will be spread almost all across the country. It has a budget of close to 25,000 crores. See, the interesting part with the railways is you cannot overnight just build a railway station. If you actually see, you cannot just build a railway station overnight. Yes, you can expand the track a bit. You can convert single line track into double line. You can improve your railway infrastructure. But with the airports, you can build airport across the country. For example, if a city does not have an airport, you can just take a lot of empty land, start building an airport. But with railway stations, you cannot just randomly bring a railway station, you cannot just randomly build a railway station wherever you want. So with railway stations, you just have to revive them, you just have to improve the existing railway stations. You can expand railways, you can put new tracks, etc., but you can't just randomly put a railway station in the middle of nowhere. That is why restoring railway stations is even a more difficult process that the government is trying to do under the Amrit Bharat station scheme. It will be in a different phases. In together, we want to, or the government wants to restore over 1,300 railway stations across the entire country, make them better in terms of traffic circulation, in terms of signage for the passengers, so that the passengers are not dependent on asking for directions. There should be better waiting room facilities, etc., better facilities for eating, better facilities for parking. All of that is a part of the scheme that the government of India is working on. It was launched back in February 2023 by the Ministry of Railways. There is a station wise plan. Every station has a different plan depending upon what is the requirement of the station, depending on how many people come in every single day. Does it have enough parking? Does it have enough food facility? Does it have enough place to accommodate people? Does it have enough waiting rooms, etc.? The government of India is planning to make the stations as centers of the city development to make sure there is enough transportation, passengers have an easier time in catching trains, and all the information is provided to them upfront. The government is focusing on improved passenger amenities, taking input from the local community. Also, government is planning to improve how much fuel consumption we have in railways, in trains, and in the railway stations. The government is trying to switch to green energy as much as possible. The government is focusing on setting up bio toilets. A lot of railway stations now have solar panels also set up. Many railway stations in India are using electricity made from solar power. Government is trying to expand that plan as well to make as many railway stations dependent on biopower and solar power as much as possible. The goal is to have net zero emissions in the Indian railway network by 2030. It will be a difficult goal to achieve, but the focus is on green building standards, having energy efficient buildings, etc. One of the important things that we don't realize is railways in India has a lot of real estate. No other department in the government has so many buildings and so many real estate that the railways has. And this real estate can be used effectively by the government to manufacture and to produce as much solar energy as possible, which will help us in achieving a net zero target as well. There are a few other things about the railways that you must know. First, Indian Railways has their own mascot called Bholu. It was created by the National Institute of Design in 2002. Also, our railway network is the fourth largest railway network in the entire world in terms of kilometers coverage. Multiple railway sites are considered as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. For example, the Darjeeling Himalayan Railway, the Chhatrapati Shivaji Terminus in Mumbai, Nilgiri Mountain Railway, Kalka Shimla Railway, all of these are considered as UNESCO World Heritage Site. We also have the world's highest railway bridge, that is the Chenab Railway Bridge, which is the world's highest, located in Jammu and Kashmir. All of these are important facts about railways that you must know. Let's see if we can answer this question as well. Read this carefully. I'll give you 15 seconds for this one. It's a pretty easy question to answer. %72% people got this right. I just showed this to you in the last slide. The mascot used by the Indian Railways is called Dholu, that is an elephant. Those who don't know mascot is kind of a sign. Like, do you remember Air India used to have this mascot called the Maharaja? Or when you go to McDonald's, you see that funny guy, statue of the funny guy outside McDonald's sitting on a bench, Ronald or whatever the name is. Remember that? That's a mascot. So a sign or a symbol that is attached to that brand, that's called a mascot. When you see Olympics, World Cup, etc., you see some mascot animals being used as mascot, as logos, etc. That is what a mascot is. So Indian Railways also, as I discussed, has a mascot called Bholu, that is a small elephant that is used here. Okay. Before going ahead, let me see a couple of more questions. Bhanu has a question. Why government wants amendment in the appointment of election commission? If the government of the day is going to decide about election commission, election is not going to happen in unbiased manner. Sorry, Bhanu, that is the entire reason why the government wants to control it. You are asking me why the government wants to control it. If the government controls it, it will not have unbiased election. Why would any government want unbiased election? Would the government not want election that is in their favor? As simple as that. Every government at the end of the day would want these authorities to work in favor of the government. You might not like it, but that is the reality. Every government wants that. Why is it that the governments want to appoint governors of their choice? Why is it that they appoint only those people as governors that are friendly to them? Because they think that they will help them. As simple as that. Okay. Some people are complaining about the audio issue. I'll refresh at my end. I request you also to maybe refresh it and see. I'll refresh it at my end also, just to see if it is working. Is your audio better now? Is your audio better now? For those whose audio was fine earlier, you don't answer. For those whose audio was not fine earlier, I'm asking them. Please don't tell me that it was fine earlier as well. If it was fine earlier, great. Be happy. For those. Okay. Okay. Perfect. The next topic that we have in news once again is Navik. Shweta Singh, how many stations selected for this development? Shweta, about 1,300 stations have been selected in different phases. Prime Minister has inaugurated this in about 500 odd stations. Vijay Singh, Indian Railways is already in losses. Does this scheme help us or the correct time of introduction of this scheme? See, Vijay, understand something. When government of India runs something, public services such as railways, etc., cannot be run only so that profit is made. You have to understand, not every government company will run just to make profit. I'll give you a very simple example. I'll give you a simple example. Now, I don't know about the case right now. A few years back, if you have to go to Ladakh or basically go to higher up mountains, the only network that you would have is BSNL. Only BSNL would work in Ladakh and no other network would work. Now, I don't know what is the situation now, but whatever it was situation, it will be. Now, you might say, sir, BSNL is going into losses. Why are they giving services to people in Ladakh? They should cut down their services, cut down their losses, because they will spend so much money in setting up their network in Ladakh, but they will not get any revenue out of it. So, do you think we should just cut down BSNL from Ladakh because they are not making any profit? No, because that is not how public service works. If BSNL or railways make a profit, great, nothing like that. But again, the problem is you cannot have railway services or telecom services of the government based on the fact that you have to make profit. That is what the idea of public service is at the end of the day. So, yes, railway going into losses is not an ideal situation, but you cannot base your development of railways saying that, oh, we will not give any facility to people traveling in railways because we are not into any profit. That's not how it works, because public service doesn't work in that manner. So do understand that. Chandra Jyoti Singh, should railway station be given to private company for better services? I don't think. See, it's an assumption that we make that giving it to private company will make it better. Again, as the answer remains the same, public services are not made so that profit is made out of it. If the government just wanted to make a profit out of all the public services, would have been very different. Public services are made so that it's for people to benefit. For example, if the government tomorrow says that to walk on any road you have to give 10 rupees, fine. Why? Because government is going into losses. So we are building road, every road that you travel on you have to give us 10 rupees. That's not how it works, right? You can't just make profit out of the people's pocket. Anyway, let's go ahead then. The next topic that we have is Navik. We have discussed about Navik multiple times in the past as well. What is Navik? The idea is very simple. Just like we have the GPS, that is the global positioning system that is used by US or that has been invented by the US military. India wanted to have its own navigation system. Our own navigation system is called Navik. That is the government of India's navigation system. Why is it in the news? It is because Navik will be linked to Aadhaar enrollment centers. So basically, the Aadhaar enrollment centers where you go to register for Aadhaar to give data, etc., they need satellite services. So far, the Aadhaar enrollment centers were connected to the GPS. The problem with GPS is owned and controlled by the US government. GPS was actually a result of American experiment for their own military. They wanted the military to have better services. That is how they built the GPS. India does not want to be dependent on that. We have built our own Naviks, or Aadhaar enrollment centers will now be linked to Navik. Those who are interested in knowing the full form of Navik, it's navigation with Indian constellation. Now, you cannot say that Navik is a complete alternative to the GPS. GPS is very different. It has a worldwide coverage, meaning that whichever place on earth you go on, doesn't matter, GPS will give you the coverage. You go to Paris, you go to Japan, you go to Australia, you go to Europe, the same Google Map app in your phone will work. The Google Maps app in your phone is based on GPS, so it will work anywhere in the world. Navik, on the other hand, will not work anywhere in the world. The idea of Navik is India plus 1500 kilometers from India's coastline. So Navik is not a global coverage. GPS has global coverage. How will you get global coverage? The idea is simple. The more satellites that you send, the more coverage you will get. Navik is based on 7 satellites, only 7. The more satellites you keep on sending, the more coverage you will have. I'll give you one more interesting example. We keep on saying that ISRO is doing very well, and ISRO is actually doing very well. There's no doubt about that. But we should not start comparing ISRO with NASA all of a sudden. NASA is way, way ahead with their funding, how much money they spend on their activities. For example, NASA has a lot more satellites around the world than ISRO. I'll give you a simple example. One simple example. Do you know in 2020, India had Galwan Valley clashes with China? As you know, in 2020, in Ladakh, in Galwan Valley, Indian Chinese soldiers were face to face with each other. Many Indian soldiers even lost their lives. Do you know it was America? Their satellites had caught the Chinese soldiers coming into India. It was America that informed India that Chinese soldiers coming into your territory, and then India responded by sending their soldiers. Do you know that? So it was American GPS that keeps an eye everywhere around the world over every country, and they were the ones who caught the Chinese activity. They told us that you have to go there. So again, you can't compare them with ISRO because their budget is humongous. With better budget, greater budget, they have the freedom to have much better, much more satellites. So their GPS would obviously have much better, much more coverage as compared to what India's Navik would have. Now, in simple terms, rather than going into technicalities of it, just remember this: GPS or Navik, etc. All of them have two versions. One version is standard positioning system, that is what we use, and then there's restricted services. I'll give you a simple idea. When you use Google Map is not extremely accurate. Sometimes you book a cab, the cab will say, I'm standing right here, sir, where are you? And you will say, I'm also standing right here, but you will not be able to see each other because he may be standing in the next lane, you will be here. So it's not extremely accurate. It is available free of cost to us. This is called standard version, which is available for the civilian use. But the version that the American military uses is very different. The version that American military uses, it is extremely accurate. That is how, sitting in America, they can see where Osama bin Laden is hiding. Why? Because their version of GPS is much, much more accurate. For example, in our version of the GPS Google Map, you cannot see inside your house, right? You cannot see which person is standing where, what is happening inside the house. In the American GPS version, they have a lot more access that is available only to the military. Similarly, with Navik also, there will be two versions. One version, it will only be for civilian use, not very accurate. One version for military purposes that will be used by the armed forces. Can we use Navik now? We can, but our smartphones, etc., are not compatible with Navik right now. The smartphone apps that we use, like the Google Map, etc., it is based on GPS. The government of India is asking the cell phone companies to make changes in their hardware. Only then we would be able to use a Navik app on our mobile phones. Some mobile phone companies have said that, okay, we will make mobile phones which are compatible with Navik now, but so far that has not happened in our market. One other important application of Navik is disaster management. The National Disaster Management Agency has been using Navik already. They have been using it to make sure that they send information as quickly as possible to the affected people. And we have been extremely successful in that. If you see the number of people who have lost their lives due to natural disasters in India, be it cyclones, etc., they have reduced considerably. One of the reasons is early dissemination of information that is happening with the help of systems such as Navik in the country. This is an infographic which will give you a lot of detail about how Navik works. It's based on 7 satellites, 3 geostationary, 4 geosynchronous satellites. Again, the more satellites you have, the more area or the region you will be able to cover, as simple as that. Just like we have Navik, just like America has the GPS, we have different countries having their own systems. For example, there is Russia's GLONASS, they have their own system. European Union have their own Galileo that has 30 satellites. We also have Japan having their own system that works along with the GPS. So different countries around the world have their own navigation system because no one wants to depend on the system of some other country. Perfect. Let's see if we can answer this slightly tougher question and then we'll go ahead. Read this carefully. Should we begin the time? Okay. 22% only gave the correct answer. This is actually D. All of these are correct. Slightly difficult question to answer. All of these are actually correct. First, we just discussed it's a set of 7 satellites in total. Second, Navik has been recognized as a part of International Maritime Organization, as a part of Worldwide Radio Navigation System. Basically, IMO, International Maritime Organization, keeps an eye on the Indian Ocean region. Any cyclones, etc., that are developing here, they also take help of the Navik satellites. Third is also correct. Now, interestingly, if you see here, it is called the eighth satellite. Why? There are only 7 satellites, and why the eighth? Because one of the satellites stopped working properly. In one of the satellites, there was an error, so we had to send an eighth satellite also. There are total 7 only, just that one of them, the second last one, did not work properly. So we had to send a replacement satellite. That is why the eighth satellite. So the answer here is D. All of these are correct. Okay, couple of questions quickly. Akala is saying it is void to CEC for removing CJI, Supreme Court power to cancel amending or not. I am not able to understand your question. Maybe you'll have to make a better sentence here also in the exam also. Let's make a better sentence also that I can understand and the examiner can understand. Akala, I don't know what you mean to say. It is void to CEC for removing CJI SC power to cancel amending. I don't know what your question is. Maybe you can ask this in a better way. Rao Sahib is saying, how recognize the earthquake by Navik? So Navik does not recognize the earthquakes. It just spreads information. Prajwal is saying, is Mapple's app using Navik? What is Mapple's here? If your question is about Apple Maps, no. Apple Map is not using Navik. It has to be a change in the hardware of the phones. Most phone companies have not accepted because why would they spend more money changing their hardware? So the government is trying to convince phone companies to change their hardware so that they're compatible with Navik, but that has not happened so far. Not with iPhone at least. Shiva is saying, is Navik compatible with your car's infotainment system? Not with mine, so I don't know. I'm sure not with yours also. It is not. It is not. Guys, okay, just a second, just a second. Those who are asking about different apps, etc. Prajwal, this answers for you mainly. Those who are asking about different apps, please understand. For Navik to be compatible, you need a change in the hardware of the phone, not the apps. Just because you download some other app in your phone, in your existing phone, doesn't mean that Navig will now work. No. Navig works on different frequency range. For that frequency range to be caught by your phone company has to make changes in the hardware. So it doesn't matter which app you're talking about. If your phone is compatible with Navig, even Google Map can work on Navig. So it depends on the hardware of the phone and not really the app part. So the question is not whether the software companies or the apps are doing it. The question has to be about whether the phone companies are changing their hardware or not. Okay, perfect. Let's go ahead then. The next small article is on the IIP Index of Industrial Production. The numbers for June have come out. It shows a growth of 3.7%, although it is a good growth, but as compared to the last year or the last numbers that have come out in the last month, it's not very good. Manufacturing is not taking off at such a fast pace as it should. The IIP, as you know, is an indicator that tells about the volume of production of industrial products in India. This IIP is an indicator that measures the growth of the industry mainly in three sectors. What are the three sectors? Mining, manufacturing, and electricity. The base year for this is 2011 and 12. Do remember this part. Now, it is used by multiple government agencies to make their policies to get an indication about how the industry in India is progressing. Ministry of Finance uses it, RBI also uses it for their policy making purposes. It's also used for the calculation of quarterly GDP numbers as well. There are 8 core sectors of the IIP. Questions have been asked on this. Please do remember there are a total of 8 core sectors that together make up 40.27% weightage of the IIP. Which are the 8 core sectors? These are the ones: refinery, electricity, steel, coal, crude oil, natural gas, cement, and fertilizer. These together are called 8 core sectors of the IIP. They have been given different weightage, and together they make up 40.27% of the IIP weightage. This was a question asked in 2015 based on this only. Let's see if we can answer this one. See if you can. B is the correct answer, as 55% people said electricity. So basically, out of these four, electricity is the highest. Overall, electricity is second. Overall, highest weight is given to refinery, but refinery is not given here. So electricity generation is the option with the topmost weightage amongst these four given. Now coming to the last topic for the day, I'll take up your questions after this. The last topic and a very significant development that happened on the last day of the parliament, Home Minister announced that the government of India is planning to overhaul, make changes in the existing laws in India, the old laws that have existed since the time of the British. The IPC, that is the Indian Penal Code, the CRPC, that is the Criminal Procedure Code, and the Indian Evidence Act. These are the laws that come with the British legacy introduced by the British. The government of India is planning to change these and make new laws, introduce new laws, change certain punishment, etc. The government of India has introduced 3 new bills to replace this. For example, Indian Penal Code will be replaced by Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita. Code of Criminal Procedure will be replaced by Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita. And the Indian Evidence Act will be repealed and replaced by Bharatiya Sakshya Bill. Now, these are huge bills, very large, very long. You can't remember all the features, but I'll just share with you some of the most interesting and important features of these bills. Again, they have not been passed. They have been introduced. They will go to the committees. They will discuss, give the final shape. And maybe in the next session, we will see the passing of this. Let's see one by one what are the important features that have been introduced in the IPC, the CRPC, and the Indian Evidence Act. First, the main feature of Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita Bill. Mainly, it defines terrorism, etc., properly. Another interesting thing that the government did was government repealed the offense of sedition. Remember, there have been a lot of talk about sedition. Sedition means when you spread hatred against the government. Many people said the government is misusing it. When you criticize the government, even on social media, you get punishment under sedition. Government will repeal this. Mob lynching has also been introduced now, where maximum sentence of capital punishment, that is, even death penalty, can be given to you. We also have a law on false promise of marriage now. If you have sexual intercourse with women on false marriage promise, it will also be punishable. These are just a few of the prominent provisions of the law. Once it passes in the final stage, then we can have a more detailed discussion about it. The bill also fixes maximum 180-day limit to file a charge sheet. Then we have the Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita. Again, it is about how the cases will be heard. It's about how the courts will also allow video recording of the statement of those who are victims of sexual abuse, etc. Right now, even the victims of sexual abuse have to come to the court to give testimony. Now, they don't have to come to the court, they can give their statement in a video recording which will be played in the court. It will also use technology for appeals, for video conferencing, etc. It also says that no arrest can be made without prior approval of an officer of at least the rank of the DSP in offences which are punishable by less than 3 years if the individual is over 60 years of age. Okay, there's an interesting question. Why are all the names in Hindi? I don't know. At the end of the day, Hindi is an official language of India. So you might not like it, but again, Hindi is not the official language of India. If you look at the official language, it is English and Hindi. So there should not be any problem with the law passed by the parliament named in the Hindi language. Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita has these provisions as well. Do you have to remember all of these or not? I don't think so. At least wait for the laws to be passed eventually. At least wait when the laws will be passed eventually. When they are passed, then we will look at some of the important provisions. For example, this is a very interesting and important provision introduced. Right now, there is no time limit within which the president or the governor has to decide a mercy petition, because of which many mercy petitions have been delayed for many years now. In fact, there are cases where Supreme Court has commuted the death sentence into life imprisonment because the president just did not decide on the mercy petition. When Pratibha Patil was the president of India, in her entire 5 years, she did not decide even one single mercy petition. So mercy petitions are kept on lying idle. Now that would change. It would give a 30-day time limit to the governor, 60-day to the president to decide on the mercy petition, and there will be no appeal made against the decision of the president in any court. Similarly, the Bharatiya Sakshya Bill also has these important provisions. Again, we will be discussing these in more detail once the law actually passes in the parliament, because then we'll have to see if there is any change that has been made in any of these. But again, it's once it does pass, it is a very, very important topic. If it does pass in the winter session or any time before your next attempt, I would highly advise you to read this in detail, because a lot of important changes are being made here, both for prelims and for the mains examination point of view. I'll end this by giving you a practice question for the mains examination from this topic. The practice question is, how would the overhaul of IPC, CRPC, and the Indian Evidence Act reform the Indian justice system? Elaborate with examples. Once these three pass, once these three are overhauled, they become extremely important for examination. Do read about that in detail as well. This brings us to the end of today's session. I will take a few questions and then we'll end it from here. Aarti Singh, is it necessary to watch parliamentary debates for UPSC? Aarti, no, because these days we don't really have debates in the parliament. We have something else. So I don't think parliamentary debates now are important. Okay, very quickly. Ruchi is saying, what is the role of Aadhaar enrollment in that? No, Ruchi, there's no role. The news is that Aadhaar enrollment centers, which need satellite connections, were earlier using GPS. Now they will be using Navik. That is the only thing why it is in the news. Sulabh is saying, is it wise if we reserve Navik for military operations? Sulabh, see, every navigation system, including Navik, will have two versions. Military version is always separate, civilian version is always separate. So it's not really a problem that civilians will also use it. It's a different version. Yeah, that is the answer to your question as well. Sulabh is saying, why we are using Navik over GPS for civilian purpose can be reserved for military operations. See, again, if we have our own indigenous technology, why not use it? No one is stopping you from using GPS, but if you have your own technology, own indigenous made technology, why not use that? Shweta saying, if 4 companies are not accepting, then how will Navik popularize in India? Shweta, see, the government has to make it lucrative for the phone companies to do this. The government, for example, has to say to the phone companies that we will compensate you for any additional cost. That is why the companies will switch, right? Why would a phone company switch and make a new hardware? So the government of India will have to make it worth their time. They might say, okay, we'll give you incentive in return. We'll compensate you for the cost. Like, it depends on how the government works. When I become the prime minister, I'll tell you how to do this. Right now, I can't tell you. Then Syam is saying, what is the best way forward to mitigate wildfire? Long term has to be stopping climate change. In the short run, it has to be keeping an eye, making sure there are better techniques that are evolved to fight against wildfire. That is the only way forward. Anubhav is saying, tips to manage time between GS, optional, current affair, etc. Anubhav, everyone has 24 hours only. It's not that someone has lesser time or more time. Everyone's condition is different. So I can't tell you how to manage the time. It depends upon you at the end of the day. Some people are working, some people are not working. You have to see where your time goes. How do you spend your time? It has to be a different approach for every single person. Just see where you are wasting your time and can you utilize that better at the end of the day. Yes, I'll show you the score board also. Just this is a leaderboard. There are 7 people who answered all 7 questions correctly. Shashank, Gladinal, Vandana, Tehreem, Preeti, Elenta, and Srimati. These are the people who answered all 7 questions correctly. Good job, guys. Perfect. I'll end the session now. Thank you so much for joining in. I'll see you soon in the next session in the coming days as well. Bye-bye. Good night. Jai Hind.